Both front!
Woo!
How about that one?
That's our new leaders right there.
Big Stewie!
University of Montevallo, 24-96.
The University of Montevallo wins its third straight title.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome into a new episode of the Rapala We Are Collegiate Bass Podcast. If you tuned into the last one, that was episode 200, so now we're on to episode 201. I'm your host, Kyle Curry. Today we're going to be joined by Hunter Bland. We'll get to why he's on our show today. We've got our first tournament coming up at Lake Hartwell. The Hartwell Slams this upcoming weekend, and we want to talk boating safety. Cross-college fishing over the last 6 months, there's been several incidences both on and off the water involving college anglers that have resulted in the loss of life. And something that we want to talk about today is just bringing awareness to those safety precautions that can be taken both on and off the water to try and keep you safe and get you back home, back to the truck at the end of the day to be able to make that drive back to the house. So Hunter, we'll bring you in real quick. For those that aren't familiar, 7-year anniversary of an incident that occurred with you in a college tournament out on the water not that long ago. Now, give a little brief explanation, anyone that might not know about your incident, the story that occurred. Tell them real quick, just kind of start to finish of those moments that morning that kind of changed the path of your life.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And first off, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's pretty incredible 201st episode. Super awesome there, and I'm very passionate about college fishing. So like you mentioned, in January, I just hit the 7th year anniversary of my boating accident. So several of you guys may have seen that. In 2017, we were fishing a college tournament on Lake Seminole. Everything was good to go. Practice was great. We idle by the takeoff dock, pull your engine cutoff switch. That works. We're not hiding any shiners in the live well. Everything's great. And we take off for the morning. We're halfway down the Flint River, about 2 miles from takeoff. And my hydraulic steering comes apart. And me and my partner, Connor, were ejected from the boat. So we both had our life jackets on. Like I mentioned, I was wearing my engine cutoff switch. So that immediately killed the engine. And, those two things really saved our lives. Like if we didn't do the common, simple, safe boating practices, to be honest with you, I wouldn't even be here today. And I don't say that, to try to sound blunt. I just, I'm super thankful, the good Lord gave us the opportunity to survive that and see, that there were bigger and better things that we could learn from that. And, from that day, it really did change my life. I got in the truck and I started driving back to Florida, and I remember, man, I'm alive by an inch, but I want to take that inch and make it a mile, and I want to help one person. If I can help one person, then it would be all worth it. And so from that point forward, I ended up filming a PSA with the National Safe Boating Council, and then that started getting some traction, and I actually got a phone call from Yamaha, and Yamaha's like family to me, and Skeeter Yamaha signed me right out of college to work on safe boating initiatives, and I've been with them ever since. So, I'm super thankful for them taking a chance on a guy who had a dream, and it was a dream to fish, yes, but it was a dream that fishing brings us all together. But I wanted to use my story to help people, and it was something kind of off the wall that I pitched when we started talking to each other, and Yamaha was so gracious to, put me on the road and try to help other people, and that's what we've been doing for the last 7 years, so I'm super thankful for them.
Yeah, as part of those initiatives and things you were doing on the road, I think it was the first time that I met you at Pickwick Lake in Florence back probably 5 or 6 years ago now. You'd been doing it for a little while. And getting out there and talking to people, being able to tell your story, it's impactful. It's, there's some people that, unfortunately, due to circumstances, they can't tell that story and provide a tale of caution or something that might save a life. But you're able to do that, come out, tell these stories, and that's what we want to talk about more here today. Something as simple as wearing your engine device shut off while you were driving. It's something that our dads or whomever taught us how to boat when we were kids probably was the very first thing. It's like, son, you never leave the dock without this. And you grow and you mature and things change, and you might get a little more relaxed in your ways, or even on the road, if it's as simple as plugging in your seatbelt, kind of the same thing on and off the water, you maybe get a little more relaxed. But that little device right there attached to you and your operating device for the outboard basically saved your life. It's pretty wild that little red wire can do so much. But talk a little bit about the importance of those details and what that can mean out there on the water for your safety?
Yeah, that's a great point. Those are put on a boat for a reason. And I know, when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I was like, well, I mean, they put them on a boat, but are we ever really going to need them? The answer to that is yes, because I found out what can happen when you use it, and it really does save your life. And so you might not think, oh, that'll never happen to me. In my instance, it happened to me when I least expected it. And that's the point I want to make, is that I want everybody to think about preparing for the unexpected, because you can't predict it. I could never predict that my hydraulic steering would come apart. Never would have imagined that. Most people never would have thought that would happen. But as I started, unfolding, it's happened to multiple people over time. So it's things that you never would imagine could happen. But if I prepare for that, we hope and pray a negative is not going to happen, like your hydraulic steering coming apart. But if we hope and, prepare, at the end of the day, we pray for safety when we leave the dock, but we have to do the things that prepare us for success, like wearing a life jacket, hooking up your engine cutoff switch. And so by hooking that up and checking that it was in proper working condition, I prepared for something that could be unexpected down the road. So those are just some of the little things that, I encourage everybody to think about. When I get ready to tear off to, go to fish Hartwell later this year for an open, I'm going to check my tire pressure. I'm going to make sure all my lugs. I'm going to walk around my boat and make sure that everything's strapped down properly. I'm going to make sure my winch strap is tight. It's all those little things, because I could encounter a problem on the road that I didn't foresee might happen, or I might not think would happen. It's carrying a spare tire. I know we all do that. And it's just, I just want you guys to think about little stuff that can make a big difference. Just like carrying enough wrenches on your boat that, fit your battery terminal. So if you had an issue, you could solve it. Just simple things like that really set you up for success, because a lot of things that are going to happen, especially in fishing or traveling, you're never going to expect they're going to happen when they happen.
Yeah, that's going to lead me to my next point. You have the controlled variables versus the things you have no control of, right? You could do everything right, have all the stuff that you have planned, and if you're driving home, somebody on the other side of the road that hasn't taken the precaution or proceeds with the same care that you are, they make one false mistake and it could affect you. Or maybe it's out on the water, as you're talking about, when the hydraulic steering goes out, or some bird comes flying in, and you never know what those could be. But when you have a plan in place and you've got that checklist ready, you can't cover every single base, but knowing that you've done what you can before you go out and while you're out there is really going to go a long ways. Let's talk a little bit more, maybe kind of you hit on it there, but if there's anything specific that you do or share when you're out on the road talking about this preparation, right? Things to look for when you pull up to the boat ramp while you're out on the water, maybe even on the road, kind of a checklist or maybe some bullet points that pieces of advice that you would give these anglers, like, hey man, either before you leave the ramp or you leave the house, run through these couple things, that maybe you haven't thought of that are going to set you up for success for the day.
Yeah, great point. And I started doing that more and more probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I actually worked with Yamaha. So in Yamaha's My Yamaha Outboards app, we have an entire series of checklists that go from, pre-travel, pre-launch checklist, your launch checklist, your loading up checklist, your checklist back to the house. So when, you made a great point when you say checklist, and I started doing that. And, you might think it's cliche, but man, we're always busy. We're a lot of times in a hurry. And that is the worst thing you can be when you're getting ready to go on the water or getting ready to go on the road. Getting in a hurry causes you to miss little details, and little details make a difference, because that preparation is what's going to set you up for success. So using a checklist, whether you're getting in the My Yamaha Outboards app or you have a specific checklist that you like to use yourself that you're writing in your iPhone notes, whatever is going to help you the most, it allows you to say, okay, check my air pressure in my truck and boat, check. Okay, made sure all of, my tools are in the deck system in the back of my Tundra, check. Or, hey, I've double checked, that I got plenty of gas in my truck. Yeah, it's simple things, but then it's also going around and making sure that you have a lot of extra little things. Like, I keep a first aid kit in my truck. I keep one in my boat. It's making sure that you are double checking all those things before you hit the road. And there's also something I started doing that I think helps a lot, and it's familiarizing yourself with where every, tool or piece of equipment is located. So for instance, I blew a fuse in my truck not that long ago last year on the road for a tournament. And I knew where the bypass for my trailer was, and I had to zip tie that until I could find where that fuse was, because when I blew that backup fuse in my truck, I could know the surge brakes locked up on my trailer. So maybe you guys have been there, but I knew exactly where that trailer bypass was. And so instead of tearing apart my truck and trying to find that 7.5 amp fuse that I eventually found an hour later, I was able to go directly to my boat. I keep like a Plano storage box. I grabbed that bypass for the trailer, put that bypass pin in, zip tied it down, and I was able to back down the ramp, go to practice. And then when I got back to the dock that afternoon before leaving the parking lot, then I popped the hood of my truck, went through, did some research, and I found that backup fuse. And then again, I had spare fuses. So it's just little things like that. It doesn't cost really a lot of time and money to think about just those little things. A pack of fuses, 7.5 amp fuses, is like $3. So don't break the bank, but just think about all the little things that could hold you up on the road or cause a safety issue. Make sure those are in your truck and boat, and make sure you're prepared for that before you ever pull out of the driveway leaving the house.
We're talking with Hunter Bland, former college angler, had a boating incident about 7 years ago at a college tournament. Today, he's partnered with Yamaha and other brands out going across the country promoting safe boating. Going to be a little bit of a long-winded question as I start talking. I'll figure out where I'm going, but I know where I want to end when I ask it. So from an emergency response standpoint, we're talking about planning, preparation. You never want anything bad to happen while you're out there on the water or even on the road. In your scenario, there's going to be a couple layers to this, so if you need me to repeat it once you start answering, let me know. But let's start with, in your incident, what occurred in terms of response? Did somebody stop and pull over? Did you guys know who to call? Were you stranded for a little while? And then second, that leads me to, what were the steps if you had something in place? What was that? Was it the tournament director? Was it local officials? Different things. And also, if there was response from other anglers in the tournament that saw you, what is the importance of, maybe you're not directly affected, but if you see something, being able to help could also be the difference in life or death in these scenarios.
All very valid points, and I'll try to get to each one of those points pretty thoroughly. So in our accident, even a lot of times in a tournament organization, they don't have a rescue boat per se. So that's on you to have what's called a float plan. So if you guys aren't filing a float plan, it's simple verbiage for making sure somebody knows where you're at. So if I go fun fishing right around the corner from my house, I text my wife and I'm like, hey, sweetheart, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be back at the dock at 11:15. I'll text you when I'm headed back to the house. Well, she knows what ramp I'm at, and she knows when I'm supposed to be back. So if it's 12:15 and she hasn't heard from me, she's probably going to text me. And if she can't get a hold of me, then now she knows who to call, or I'm close enough, she's going to drive to that ramp. And if my truck and boat are still there, or, my truck and trailer are still there, and my boat hasn't returned, she can't get a hold of me, she's going to immediately call emergency personnel. So that should be the same case whether you're going fun fishing or in a tournament. So in a tournament situation, there's local emergency personnel on site. So in our specific incident, we immediately called the tournament director. I was so shooken up, I couldn't even dial my phone, but I could get out. There was, and it kind of ties into one of your other questions, there was a boat that had pulled up, and I remember vaguely saying, man, we're just thankful to be alive. Like, can you please call the tournament director? And he immediately had his phone up, and he was already calling. And, to be honest, I wish I could tell you that gentleman's name, because he, was very influential, in saving our lives. But he immediately responded. And at that point, I want to make one key point with this when we're talking about this. bass fishing and fishing brings us all together. And what I saw that day when people were pulling up, that tournament didn't matter anymore. And a lot of times, like, let's remember to not get caught up in that tournament. I love to catch a bass as much as everybody else listening to this podcast. But if you're driving and you see somebody in need, that tournament is not that important anymore. That individual's life and getting them back safely is that important. So when that gentleman pulled up and called emergency personnel, that's what got everything started. And so actually the tournament organization dumped a boat in the water because they could get to us quick enough, and they ran down the river to us and picked us up because the water temps were like 50 degrees. So they wanted to make sure to get us back and, start getting us warmed up and get out of those wet clothes. So they took us back to the dock. But, in tying into that, no matter what tournament you're fishing or what event you're fishing, or even it's locally, have that float plan in place so that you can notify emergency personnel the minute something was to happen. You didn't return to the dock or something happens. And like I mentioned, if you're going down the lake, river, you're bank fishing and something doesn't seem right. You're on the highway and somebody's pulled over and something, there's a lot of things that happen on the road that you got to be really careful of. But if you see something bad going on right in front of you, don't drive by it, because that split second decision for you to swing over there because it looks like two kids are swimming in the water. We were swimming in the water and you saved our life. So just remember that, we all have responsibilities to be good stewards in conservation, but as well as being good stewards of, helping each other, because at the end of the day, we're all guys and gals that love to spend time on the water. But we're in this together and we owe it to each other to set a great safety example. But if somebody's in need, we owe it to each other to help them.
Two more questions here, and then we'll wrap it up. This next one, as you've been traveling the country, telling your story, what kind of response are you getting? Or maybe is there a cool story where someone, has heard your story or has just heard your story and it's impacted their life in terms of the way that they responded or they've gone out and acted towards others? Just any interaction that sticks out to you as you've been, going through this opportunity over the last 7 years to tell about what's occurred to you and how to go about being prepared and trying to help in these situations. What's something that maybe you remember someone's come up to you and told you that's either helped them or they've been impacted by it?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions, man, because it's been a big blessing to still be here and share my story. And like I mentioned at the beginning, if I could help one person, I knew it would be all worth it. And the good Lord's blessed us over the last 7 years, and we've been able to reach a ton of people. I have a ton of stories that I would love to share, but two short ones come to mind. I spoke at a college national championship several years ago, and I got a text the night after I talked, or that very same night. So it was a couple hours after I talked. And, I love to encourage people to just live life to the fullest, because one thing I learned through all of this is life is so short, soak it up, but we're not invincible. So, we're not promised tomorrow, and I've learned that. So every day is a new day. It's a gift and a blessing. And so I talked about that in my talk, as well as safe boating. And I got a message that very same night from a college angler who his truck, he blew a tire or something and caught the edge of the pavement, and they wrecked their truck and boat on the way back to the hotel, get ready for registration. And thank the Lord they were okay. But his text basically said, thanks, man, for talking so much about safety. We were taking the necessary precautions. We were driving careful. And, but I also learned through this that to live life to the fullest, because you never know what can happen. And he actually came through the registration line that night to give me a hug and tell me thank you. And, man, that meant a lot to me because, like I said, I'm blessed to be alive, but I'm a big family guy. I love meeting people, and it really came full circle for me this year. So my daughter's about to turn 15 months. So last year she was born just 2 days after the 6-year anniversary of my boating accident. And what that told me is that 21 years old when I had my boating accident, my wife and I had just gotten engaged, and I didn't think I was going to graduate college. I didn't think I was going to get married. And, I'd always wanted to be a father one day. But it came full circle for me when I realized my little girl was born 2 days after my accident. So when we talk about safety and precautions, just think about your future, because that came full circle for me when I realized the life jacket and an engine cutoff switch saved my life. And now I got to put my little girl in the boat for the first time about 2 weeks ago and watch her put on a Mustang life jacket. And it came full circle, man. I realized that, life is bigger, and a simple safety precaution allowed me to see that moment. So just think about that. I love each and every one of you guys, and I'm thankful to be here, but I want you guys to get to experience those same moments. So just think about that when you're getting ready to tear off on the road or the water. Just take a simple step to be safe, because your family counts on you.
That's really impactful stuff there. Great advice. I'm going to ask this last question. It's hard to follow up that, because you pretty much summed up everything that I think needs to be said and that these anglers want to hear. But just real quick before we go, any last words of advice, something we haven't touched on that you'd like to share, whether it's an experience or just a tip for them out on the water, whether it's this weekend or on for the rest of their life?
Yeah, something we haven't touched on that I'll share real quick is, it's okay to be different. And what I mean by that is, over the years I struggled with, I watched guys growing up like Kevin Van Dam, and he's incredible at catching a bass. Or I watched, guys like Wade have an incredible show and just catch fish after fish. And I started traveling around the country, and I've struggled to catch them, and when it counts, and I can't seem to piece it all together. And then I started realizing, hey, like, I'm the boating safety guy. Like, that's who I want to be. I want to help people with that. So I use that quick example to share with you that it's okay to be different. You might be the next Elite Series angler, just absolutely crushing them. And, the fishing side of things comes super easy to you. Or you might be an incredible business person or really good with social media, and you go work for a company within the industry and you help them grow leaps and bounds, and you bring new ideas and new creativity to the table. So it is okay to be different, and it's okay to dream, because no dream is too big as long as you control two things, and that's your attitude and your effort. So work extremely hard on your attitude and your effort, and the rest will fall into place, because the good Lord will put you exactly where he wants you. And I've learned that, because I never thought I would have flown out of a boat and be here 7 years later getting to share my experiences and hopefully help somebody.
It's awesome advice. Hunter, thanks for joining us here today, man. Very impactful message, very important message that these anglers need to hear as they get ready to go fishing today, tomorrow, this weekend at the tournament, and honestly for the rest of their lives. As we've heard here today, the way that one morning has impacted the trajectory of your entire career and your life at the same time, man. Thanks for talking to us today, and keep up the good work. It's a very good, strong, important message that needs to be shared.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me.
Welcome to Minnow King. How can I help you?
Everything looks good. I'm friggin' starving, man. Been spawning all morning.
Ugh, TMI, bro. What do you want?
I'll take a Crush City freeloader and gizzard shad.
Anything to drink.
Water.
Pull ahead, please. Welcome to Minnow King.
We're gonna have what he's had.
Yeah, throw me in a net BLT, too.
Pull ahead, please.
Calm down. Quit feeding him so much.
Hey, man, I'm trying to, man. If you
If you overfeed him, he's gonna hide under a log.